Teach yourself visually, Microsoft 365. We're in Excel, Chapter 11, working with formulas and functions. This is fun. Please say it with me. This is fun. Now, there are two different terms. There's formulas and functions. Formulas is like you're doing a math problem, except the computer does the calculation for you. You still have to be able to punch in the right numbers. There's a way to do it, and if you understand those ideas, then you'll be fine. So it starts with an equal sign. That's the first thing to remember. And you have to type it. I mean, you don't, sometimes you don't have to, but as a rule, type it. So here's an example of what it looks like. Equals 2 plus 2. So that kind of makes sense to you, but it's not 2 plus 2 equals, it's equals 2 plus 2. On the other hand, that's not really the way we do it in Excel, but that's the format that you would use. Equals first, and then what you want to do the math with. Instead, what we use is the cell reference, the cell number, or something like that. So we might say equals A1 plus A2, which you can do by clicking or by typing. Clicking is the easiest way, but sometimes typing. I type a lot, so that's fine. So it would be equals A1 plus A2. And that's good. And that's a formula. That kind of makes sense to you. There's one more way to do it that you'll be learning more about in a couple of slides down, a couple of pages over, which is using that's coming in a second, a cell range. A range means from here to there. So a cell range would be, instead of typing A1 plus A2, you would say A1 colon, that's two dots on top of each other, A1 colon A2 or Z93. And so it means go from here to there. And then what you'll be using it with mostly is a function, which is not what we're doing now. That's what we'll do in a second. A sum of the cells A1 to Z93. But you put a colon in the middle and you put parentheses around the cell ranges that you're going to include. There are mathematical operators that do the math for you, like if you're punching on the calculator or on your phone. Like calculator days, sorry. And then if you remember from your math class that you hated, probably, it's just like math. There's which ones come first in order. If you see all these math symbols as formula, which two do you do first? And so those apply here as well. You have to know those. And the other thing is you should understand about reference operators, the term. If you don't know the term, it's okay. Reference operators, which is the colon, that's the two stacked dots, the two periods, okay, that says from here to there, and the comma, which you'll find out in a second. Maybe you have to have this information and that information and that information to make this thing work. And so you would use a comma. And then there are spaces between sections so that it all works out right. If you look at these pages in your book and study them, study through them once, read them once, you don't have to remember it all. You come back and look at it, you'll get the ideas of what to do. That's the idea of those reference pages. And now we'll go on and we'll actually do one. We're going to create a formula, not a function, a formula. So here I am in Microsoft 365, and it's already typed. The author of the book was very kind, and he sent me these files pre-typed so that we won't have to type it by hand. So I'm going to go to my content, which is like going to the file drawer and open it. And did I do it before? Is it shared? Does it send? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? It's a local file, but that location isn't available to me here. Oh, wait, upload. Okay, here comes upload. If we did this before, that's okay. It's fun to say it again. And I have it, it's in a downloads folder, and it's in this Excel 365 starter files folder. That's where it is right now. It'll get moved somewhere eventually. And the name of it is Parts, and page 170. I wrote that so it'd be easy for you and me to find where it is. What we have here is a parts spreadsheet with which division it goes in. I don't know what that means. And the name of the item, what its part number is. We always have part numbers of some kind. We always have an identifier. How many we have, how much each of them cost us. And here in the last column, in column G, is how much we're going to sell them for. We bought them for $10.47 and we're selling them for $17.95. So we have a little markup there. What we want to calculate in column 11 is how much money we paid to buy that set of 57 of them. The way you calculate that is 57 times 1047. So we had 57 of them. They cost $10 each. So what's 57 times 10 bucks? That's what we're calculating. And we always start a formula with an equal sign. Equals. All right. Now, if you wanted to type it, you could type it. Me, I'd be typing it at this point, but that's okay. We're going to click. Click. How neat. Just like that. It identified cell D2 here and up in the formula bar. And the reason we do it like this is because if you type 57 and then you say, oops, that one was bad, so I really only have 56. If you had typed the number, it wouldn't recalculate. But if you type the cell reference instead, the D2, then any changes here will result in this being automatically recalculated. And that, my friends, is why we use Excel and why we use formulas. So it's D2, the D2 times E2, and it's times. Well, times, right? No, not in computers. In computers, it's an asterisk, and also in algebra, if you had algebra, and that's Shift 8 on the keyboard. Shift 8, it's the star. That's how you say times in computers. So we'll say D2 times E2. You notice that it shows up here, and it shows up here. If you find that, and then notice the colors between the two cells, if you find that you made a mistake, you could, while you're in edit mode, go back and fix it, backspace and fix it, for example, or you could come up and click in the formula bar and fix it up here. Either one is fine. When I'm done, I can either drag my mouse up there and click the checkbox, or I could just press the enter key, which is, that's what I do. Now, I need to do the same thing again. There are a couple of different ways to do it. One is, if you're a beginner, equals D2 times E2. And why would I do that? So that you have practice. Is that the way we'll do it the rest of our days? No. On the next page, we'll talk about two ways to copy the formula from one place to another. So I'm not going to fill these up yet until we get over there. Absolute and relative cell references. Those are two pretty big terms, aren't they? Absolute and relative. And we're actually going to do the relative first. Relative cell references means, well, I want the same formula, but I want it in this cell and this each row. So isn't there a way that you can do it where if I copy it once, it will just change the row number each time for me? That would be a relative cell reference. So here's the way he teaches you in the book, where I'm on page 172. So I'm going to select the cell that I want to use as the template and go up to the Home tab. And remember, mine zoomed in so far, so I have to go digging down through the menus here. And on the clipboard, I'll click Copy. Notice that I have the marching ants or the railroad tracks or whatever you want to call it. It's highlighted. And now what I'll do is select the cells that I want to have that formula applied to, which is all the rest of these. Yeah, I know I did row 2 already. That's okay. All right. And now I'll go up and paste home clipboard. It's a clipboard group and paste. And there we have it. It put the same formula all the way down. And since this is going to be a little bit hard to read, I'm going to double click so you can see it. Notice that it's D3 times E3 and D4 times E4, and it copied that formula all the way down. Okay, so you have to practice it. I mean, you can watch, but you have to practice. All right, now I'm going to undo this, Control Z to undo, and I'm going to show you another way to do it. This way uses what's called the fill handle. Now, remember that you have the hollow cross to select, and then you go to any border, and that will enable you to move. And it's a four-headed arrow if you're in the downloaded version, but it's that hand in this version. And then we have this fill handle in the bottom right-hand corner. In the fill handle, see that little box? Okay, you get your mouse right over little box, and it turns to a crosshairs. Once you have the crosshairs, now you can click and drag down. Watch. Well, if you can drag well, it does. There. And when I let my finger up from the mouse, it will have copied the formulas all the way down, and I'll just test one to see. Yep, that's right. So that's relative cell references. Relative. That means it's relative to which row you're on. It's comparative. There's another one that's called absolute cell reference, and it might seem a little bit strange to understand at the beginning, but let me explain to you how that works, and I think you'll see that it's really okay to use after all. Hold on just a second. We'll have to switch. We have to switch spreadsheets. Hold on. Now I have the file called expense budget calculation. It starts on page 183. That's the name of the file. And what we have here is expenses for January, February, March, and a total. I bet that total's made out of a formula. Let's look and see. Sure enough. Now, we did a function, and it's a function of sum, which we didn't do yet. It's okay, we're doing it next. And it's the range of cells C6 to E6, which is that advertising row. C6. You see how you have the green indicator, C? 6, D6, and E6. So F is the sum of C6 to E6. All right. Now what we want to do is make a presumption that we got some inflation going on here. So we have to project how much we're going to have to pay next year or next whatever based on the inflation. Okay? And we want to get a total budget for, this is 21, 22, okay? Pretend it's future. On all of these cells to go the same way. And that would be, don't worry about the math, okay? We're worried about the procedure. The total, I bet that's another function. Sure enough, I double clicked this time and see what it is? Yep, 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 yep. That's a sum. That'll be fun to do. All right. The increase is going to be this 24,500 and 3% more. So how do you add 3%? This is in math class. Don't worry. We'll multiply it by 1.03, okay? You don't care why that is. You don't have to understand. Just that's what it's going to be. So every one of these months, we're going to have to add 3% to it, which means we're going to multiply it by 1.03. Okay, that's it. You don't have to understand. Just this is play the game along here. So the way we'll do that is we'll say, hey, that's so big that I don't think I can. Here, let me zoom to here. Here we go. It's going to be this total, this year's total, times the 1.03. That means add 3%. And that's what it will be for next year. Good? All right. Now, if I were to copy this cell, home, clipboard, copy. Can I just use Control C after this? Okay. Anyway, Control C. And if I were to paste it here, Control V to paste, or you can do all that. Control V to paste. Now let's see what it is. Well, thankfully, the computer was smart enough to realize that we wanted to keep this cell. You can't always guarantee that. The way you guarantee it, though, is to do what's called an absolute cell reference, which means you put a dollar sign in front of the column and or the row. We're going to do both. At this stage, we'll do both. Put the dollar sign in front of them, and that tells the computer that every time you do a calculation, you use that one cell. And so once I've copied it, I can paste it. Let me show you what would have happened if this had not had the dollar signs, okay? So let me just make it C3, and so the formula comes out right, all right? But when I go now, Control C to copy and Control V to paste, now look what it did. It said, well, I don't know what to multiply by. Sure than that cell. Because we didn't tell it to lock, to use an absolute cell reference, to lock that cell in. So the way you tell the computer, let me get rid of that, to lock that in is to put dollar signs in front of the C and the 3, and that will lock the cell reference. If you're on a keyboard with function keys, life is so much easier. You can just press the F4 key and it will do that for you. You have to have your mouse on that cell somewhere and then press F4 and it will do it. And there's a whole set. You toggle through them, but this is fine too. Learning to type it by hand is also a good skill. So $3, $sign C3, and now I can, do Control C, Control V, or I can use that fill handle, remember down there in the bottom, that little guy down there, put the mouse, get the crosshairs, not the hollow pointer, and not the closing hand. Whoops, sorry about that. And not but the crosshairs. There we go. And I'll click and drag it all the way over, and it will calculate all of them for me. And I can be sure that's right because I see that I still have my 1.03, and up here it still says $3, $C, $3. That's relative cell reference. It means just notch it down and everything's fine. And this is absolute cell reference, which is hold one, like sales tax. So if you're going to do Michigan, the sales tax is 6%. You're going to go to some other state, you're going to have to change 6 to some other number. But you want all of these numbers to still reference that number, whatever that number is. When you have that situation, that's when you use an absolute cell reference. And what we'll do now is go and talk about the functions. We did the formulas. Now we're going to do the functions. Formulas equals math, functions equals computers. Okay, stand by. We'll be back.